Welcome back to Mr. Constitution YouTube channel. Today we are kind of winding up our question and answer, the general question and answer. We've got a few topics that we're going to be talking about today. The class isn't really going to start here for about another 10 minutes or so. So if you guys want to jump ahead, if you're seeing this, you want to jump ahead to where the class starts. Generally, it starts at the top of the hour. It's about 10 till. So we're just going to let a few people come on in and have some comments. So um, lots going on in the world.
That is for sure. Not all of it good either.
Not all of it bad either.
No. But today today I got hit with more of the negative headlines than the positive. So I could use a dose of good news.
Would you get anything relative to what we're doing, or?
Well, I've been spending a lot of time on Moore versus Harper. That's a Supreme Court case that's coming up. This could be a potentially very big one. That's
I'm not familiar with Moore versus Harper.
Let's talk about it. The class today. It's basically related to the independent state legislature theory. It's from North Carolina. It really comes down to: is the state legislature the final arbiter on setting election law? And the opposition to it makes a decent argument that you're almost basically saying the state legislature can send any set of electors they want, no matter what happens, and that's really not an accurate interpretation of what they're saying. But this has a pretty good chance of getting ruled a correct decision and move back towards states' rights, which we want. And there's some really fun implications. I can hold off till we get into the show to go into them.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
No, Mary, you're not late. We're early.
Mary Poppins. Hello, Jenny. Is it Jenny? Jenny? It's got to be Jenny. Spelled like that's not a Jean name.
Yeah, I don't think that would be Jeannie.
Yeah, that's a Jenny. Jenny.
Jenny.
It's got to be one of the most imitated movies of all time.
Hello, Tiffany. I feel like we haven't done one of these things in a while, or at least I haven't been part of one in a while.
I don't think we didn't do it last week because I was sick.
Well, you were sick. Doug was on the road, and I was dealing with some stuff. Though, I don't know this whole month has really been kind of chaotic.
Yeah, well, it's holiday season. It's always going to be a little bit different.
Hello, Michelle. My thought for us to jump into the Constitution again to start would be the first of the year.
Yeah,
I think that would be wise. Just the first class of January.
Yeah, that's probably going to be on the table.
By that time, all the stuff will have settled down. Things will have settled down, hopefully. Or who knows? They could be ramping up too. Who knows?
Which stuff are you talking about?
Everything. I mean, there's so many things that are kind of running parallel right now. You've got this thing with this alleged court case. With the I forget the name of the brothers that have brought this case. The thing that I found interesting was that the court reached out to them and said, "Can you push up your can you get this to us faster?" To me, that was a very good sign.
Well, you have to be a little bit more specific about which exact case you're talking about.
I'm talking about the case. I'm talking about the case for the 2020 election.
Yeah. Okay. I know what that's called. Give me a second. I'll pull it up.
Because they were going to file it, and the clerk called them and said, "Hey, what how quickly can you get this?" And they said about 2 weeks. And this is cool. Can you get it to us any faster? And essentially saying, get it to us sooner, because this would be, like the Brunson case. Thank you.
Yeah, it's Brunson. Yeah, it's fascinating. The really interesting part is that that even got as far as getting to the docket. Now, I'll give you some updates on it. On the 23rd, which was last Wednesday, the Supreme Court was supposed to render a decision of whether they're going to see it or not. That did not happen. And there was a filing that came in from the 23rd. And basically it was...
That's not what they're saying.
That's not what who's saying?
They're saying that they did say that they would see it.
That's not in the Supreme Court docket at this point.
Okay. Well, the word on the street that I'm hearing is that they said they would see it.
If that's changed, I'll go to the Supreme Court docket again.
I
just checked it yesterday.
I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying that that's what has been said out there in the public sphere.
There's a lot that's said in the public sphere that ends up not being so.
Well, I mean, that was coming from the guy who filed the lawsuit.
Okay, well, that's different. That's what I hate about switching computers. I would have had that stuff up on my other computer already.
I'm going to be right back.
You can't leave me here all alone.
Oh, I'll be here in audio. I just won't be here in video.
Hey, Devil Dog. Trying to find anything on the Brunson case here. And we have no update. We've got Brunson himself is optimistic, but what I was telling Ron is the last filing on the docket at Supreme Court, last official filing, was from the government, stating they had no intention to enter an argument, and the Supreme Court had accepted that. Of course, there's always the chance that the Supreme Court will request an argument from the government, in which case they would provide it. But that was just a very short briefing filed last week. Latest I heard is there is some kind of a hearing or decision to be made this Friday. That's not official, but I think that's probably good information. It's a fascinating case. The guy wrote it. He wrote it out. It's a pretty well-reasoned argument. My first pet peeve upon reading it is they list all the legal documents you're going to cite, and one of the ones he cites, he goes, we're going to list the Declaration of Independence as a legal document, and it is not a legal document. So that was one little flaw they had there. But overall, I thought he argued the case. He made his case. He used some good constitutional points, and they're worth listening to. Which, not too bad for a guy who's just probably someone just like us, just a researcher. Citizen. Ron, are you talking? Because I can't hear you.
Sorry, I think I accidentally muted. It was his brother who he's the plaintiff. His brother was the guy who's doing all the stuff, who wanted to file the case. So anyway, there's multiple parties involved here.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I hope it just doesn't get sent back. The fact that it got to SCOTUS is impressive. That's not an easy task.
Well, they filed it. The reason is, as I understand it, the reason they did it was because they made it as a national emergency. They did it under the guise of a national emergency. You want to say hi?
Who do we have here?
This is Magellan.
What's up, Magellan?
Yeah, Magellan is very active. He's the youngest of the crew, and he's turned out to be one of my favorite because he's just got a tremendous amount of personality. Hold on one second. I'll be right back.
And so I show up so he can run away, huh?
Devil Dog, you're asking me to look into Supreme Court case 22-380. Yeah, that's writ of certiorari was filed. That is the Brunson case. That's what Ron and I were talking about.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to read anything on it yet, but it got brought up by a couple people in class today too. So,
well, I sent it to you the day it came out,
right,
and you did not respond.
Yeah, I hadn't had a chance to read through it. I saw that you sent it to me. I haven't had a chance to read through it yet.
Yep. Well, it's going to be it's probably going to be on the docket this Friday, or whether they decide to hear it or not.
Okay.
Ron says he thought it's gone past that point. I see nothing official, so we don't know what's the actual truth at this point in time. But I do think that sounded like a pretty good report that it was going to be a decision of how it's going to go happened on Friday, and given the nature of the case, the fact that it got to the Supreme Court docket in the first place is quite impressive.
Sorry about that. It was an important phone call.
So we got our YouTube stuff, our LubeTube.
Yes,
stuff.
I did get that. I did get that straightened out. It was a mess.
Old phone number messed everything up.
I'll never make that mistake again. So I had to log out. I had to log in under a different browser. Set like a two-step verification. Log out of the old browser, log back in, and anyway, it was a lengthy process. But there was one of the reasons that we couldn't have a class a couple weeks ago was because YouTube wouldn't let me in to do it, and they wanted to verify my identity, but I couldn't verify my identity because the identity that I had the telephone number that I had attached to it I no longer had, so I couldn't. I had to figure out a workaround. So anyway, sorry guys.
Well, you're not the only one. YouTube messed with a lot of people's channels. Used to be able to hit, like on this channel here, if you go to videos, all the videos aren't there. You have to go to live to find all the old recorded videos.
Yeah.
I don't know where all the archives went, but they did that on a lot of channels. And It's frustrating. But speaking of which, I was Ron. We probably ought to. I wouldn't mind having offline archives of this show, everything we've done. So if we're going to arrange a transfer for that, that'd be kind of cool.
Okay. I'm gonna go in there and see if I can't do something about that.
Why don't you do that on your own time? Let's get going with the show.
Well, let's go. I could do it while I'm just
do it on your own time.
Whatever.
That was funny the way he said that. I'm sorry. I got a kick out of that. Notice I'm an innocent bystander just listening, folks. That I'm the type of person where when it comes to the Constitution classes, things like that, I do an awful lot of talking. But when I get into situations where other people are going at it, I become more of a listener. And I just kind of watch the fireworks. And then when it's time for me to insert what I need to insert, I'll do so. But I do get a kick out of watching sometimes the interaction of other people. That all said, my dogs are acting like they haven't seen me all day. They are in here, so they start barking. I apologize. And they're like fighting for my attention, and I'm trying to give you my attention. But anyway.
And Doug, just some general housekeeping. I was talking to Brady prior, and I think that it would be wise to do the beginning or the first class on the first Tuesday of January.
I think that's wise. That was my thinking.
Yeah, I think we're all on the same page. Yeah. What do you guys want to talk about today? Anything the audience wants to hear about?
Well, I do have something actually, and I told my class last night and this morning about it. Now, you guys get to hear this. I don't have all the names at the moment. For those of you who are not familiar, December 7th, 2020, Constitution Association, myself, George Rombach, Dennis Jackson and about somewhere between a dozen and a dozen and a half other persons filed a lawsuit. Constitution Association being the lead litigant here, filed a lawsuit against Kamala Harris for not being eligible for office.
I remember that.
Okay, so the final, for a real quick recap for those who are not familiar with the case, final sentence of the 12th Amendment, it says that the vice president must meet the same eligibility requirements as the president. So, minimum age 35, resident of the United States at least 14 years, and this funny little thing called natural born citizen. Now, when I talk about natural born citizen, of course, the enemies of the Constitution, liberty, and all that is sane, will tell you, well, she was born in the United States. That's all that matters. Or by me challenging her eligibility, it's just another quote unquote birther case. Well, the problem with the birther cases against Barack Obama is they focused on where he was born, not who his parents were. According to Vattel's Law of Nations, and for those of you who want to poo-poo the Vattel's Law of Nations as being a minor document or not something that was important to the Founding Fathers, 3 copies of it were on the floor during the Constitutional Convention. 2 of them in the English translation, 1 in the original French. So that gives you an idea of how important that resource was to the Founding Fathers that were in debate during the Constitutional Convention. And according to Vattel's Law of Nations, in order to be a natural born citizen, one must have 2 citizen parents at the time of your birth. Both parents must be citizens at the time of birth. In the case of Kamala Harris, her parents were visitors. They were here on student visas. Neither one of them were citizens. So we sued. Went to district court. And about a year after it was filed, the district court decided to dismiss the case, stating that it created a political question between the courts and the Congress, and that we could not sue because of that political question, and that the determination of eligibility belonged to Congress. So we appealed to the Ninth Circuit and finished all of our paperwork February of this year. And in our appeal, we indicate that when it comes to authorities to Congress or any part of the federal government, they must be enumerated. They must be listed in the Constitution. And there is no enumeration of the authority regarding determining eligibility in the Constitution. Therefore, Congress does not have the authority because the authority is not granted to Congress. And if a power is not enumerated, as per the 10th Amendment, power is not delegated to the United States nor prohibited to the states by the Constitution, are reserved to the states or to the people. And therefore, the determination of eligibility belongs to the states and the people. So here we are, people, hence the lawsuit. And it has been sitting in the Ninth Circuit since February, and it is still sitting in the Ninth Circuit. Well, Doug, if it's still sitting in the Ninth Circuit and there's still no decision, why are you talking about this? How is that? How is it that there is news regarding this case? Because something fascinating happened. There is an individual back east who has taken a lot of interest in our case and has worked with us since day one. He's been trying to get us funding, hasn't been real successful because it's just a quote unquote another birther case to a lot of people. But nonetheless, he's always trying to grease certain wheels and oil certain wagons in order to get the case moving forward to help us out, because he totally believes in what we're trying to do with our case. And it turns out, and I don't have a name yet because the person, Dennis Jackson, who I was talking to 2 days ago about this, couldn't remember the name. And I do need to talk to this individual, this contact back east. I was going to call him this morning and didn't get the chance. There is an individual who is newly elected to the House of Representatives who is very familiar with our case and has decided that it needs to be brought up on the floor of Congress. It needs to be presented to the House of Representatives with a Republican majority to challenge the eligibility of Kamala Harris. That is an interesting twist. in the story.
Yeah, I'd say so. Mr. Gibbs goes to Washington.
You know, and I was telling my class this morning, I want nothing more than to stand in front of a judge and give my oral argument regarding this case. I've been waiting, District, Ninth Circuit. I would love to do it in front of the United States Supreme Court, and we are working on a retired judge in San Diego right now, a federal judge who may take our case up to the Supreme Court. And we're talking to her, and we're trying to get things going on that. And I have told people all along, I want nothing more than to present my oral argument to the courts. I never thought of the possibility of presenting an oral argument to Congress. That beats the hell out of presenting it to the courts. It becomes a part of the congressional record if that becomes the case. And that in its own right could make it a very, it's already legitimate, but it could legitimatize it in the eyes of certain individuals out there. And if people say, well, Doug, I mean, okay, great, but you get rid of Kamala. They want to get rid of Kamala. This case is not about getting rid of Kamala. This case is about getting a proper definition of natural born citizen codified. So while, yes, the cherry on top is for Kamala to be removed from office and maybe even deported to Jamaica or something like that, the Kamala lawsuit is not about Kamala as much as it is about the definition of natural born citizen and making sure it's properly codified. Remember, in just the last 8 years, we have had 5 candidates ineligible for office run. Barack Obama, because remember, both parents have to be citizens time of birth. Barack Obama, by his own admission. Kamala Harris, both parents were students, student visas. And then it gets really interesting. Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, Bobby Jindal. And the wonderful thing about those last 3 is there's no way they can accuse us with our case of going after quote unquote Democrats or playing a political game. Hey, there's more Republicans than Democrats listed in a lawsuit that are not eligible. It's just that Kamala right now is a target because she's the one that's actually in the game. Now, once again, removing her from office is the cherry on top. Of course, we're not sure who ice cream cone Biden would nominate to replace her, but it would get interesting, I'm sure. That said, once again, this case is not about Kamala as much as it is about getting a definition of natural born citizen codified in the courts or maybe even in Congress, congressional record. And once again, also of getting my oral argument out there. I want to be able to talk about this stuff to people. Don't get me wrong. I love you guys, but I want to get to talk about this to people beyond who I talk to currently. I want to get it out there in the mainstream. I want Congress to shiver in their timbers because they realize the constitutionalists are paying attention.
Well, the other interesting thing about it is if you get that definition of a natural citizen, there will be implications in the eventual immigration reform discussions.
Yeah.
So it's got more impact than just on the presidency or vice presidency.
Well, and part of the reason why is because natural born citizen, while it is the primary focus of the case, citizenship in general also comes into the discussion because in the 14th Amendment citizenship clause, the testimony by Senator Howard and Senator Trumbull to Congress regarding that clause is a part of our case because I not only argue that Kamala Harris is not eligible for office, but while it's not the primary focus of the lawsuit, it is in the lawsuit. She's also not a citizen. And that goes back to my comment about her being deported to Jamaica. And if that's the case, then that means if we're able to prove that in court or Congress or whatever and get it listened to, that means that the definition of anchor baby is not citizen. An anchor baby is not a citizen according to the testimony of those 2 senators back in 1866 before Congress. And she is essentially an anchor baby, not not in the manner that we typically look at anchor babies, where they're sliding on the fence and all that. But she is the child born on American soil of people from another country who have no allegiance to this country and had no allegiance at the time. And therefore, how can she be a citizen if her parents' allegiance is to another country at the time of her birth? This idea of birthright citizenship needs to be challenged. And I believe this case could do that. Birthright citizenship, it is claimed, was cemented into place through Wong Kim Ark case back in 1898. But even that case really doesn't say being born on American soil is enough to be a citizen. In his case, he was considered to be a citizen not only because he was born on American soil, but a second step that was taken by his parents to show allegiance. They were Chinese. They could not become citizens. However, they did apply and get approved for permanent residency. And according to the judge in that case, the fact that they became permanent residents showed an allegiance, showed that they fell under the full jurisdiction of the United States. And that is also, in addition to being born on American soil, what made Wong Kim Ark an American citizen. So birthright citizenship needs to be challenged. It needs to be done away with. And I believe this case could be a step in that direction. Thank you for that, Warhamster. That was an apropos, appropriate observation.
Well, I'm not just here for my good looks, right? What's fun about this is you start playing the DC little Game of Thrones, and a lot of pundits have probably accurately been noting that the knives seem to be out for Biden now that the midterms are over. Right. CBS finally ran the story that the Hunter laptop was real. And, the speculation's wild that, Gavin Newsom's, putting himself in position for a 2024 run. But if they, would Congress, I don't think they're going to be dumb enough to impeach Biden unless they really get all of the Hunter Biden laptop stuff out there, simply because, Republicans are trying to give this impression that they're the sane party. And they, go dragging the country through another messy impeachment, even one that's deserved, is, the press is going to beat the heck out of them.
Well, and we want this to develop it fully anyway, because there are a lot of dominoes that are lined up behind it. If you just impeach Biden and it's over and all right, we're done. We want it to go through its full development, because it will implicate a whole lot of other people. There is a long list of dominoes that are connected to this whole thing.
So let's correct a couple myths on this. A lot of people out there are saying, okay, so let's say Biden gets a 25th Amendment or steps down, and something happens to Kamala, then it becomes President Nancy Pelosi. That's not the way it works. If Biden were to be stepped aside and Kamala gets moved because of this lawsuit, they will have another vice president in place beforehand. The vice president doesn't just the Speaker of the House, Kevin McCarthy, wouldn't just slide into the presidency. That's not how it works.
What if Kamala steps down?
And there's a vacancy at the time?
Mm-hmm.
That's where it gets interesting.
Because
the
theory
vacancy.
The theory floating out there. The theory floating out there right now is that Kamala will step down, and they will nominate basically a Gerald Ford situation, where they nominate a vice presidential candidate that has to be does he not have to be I don't know that process.
He has to be approved by the Senate, and I believe that's 60 votes.
No, and when it comes to that, it's actually both houses. Let me pull it up.
Yeah, I remember we talked about this one. It's a weird one. It's from one of the later amendments. Is where that comes in. So go ahead and pull that up, because it's an interesting one. But
yeah, all right. Whenever there is a vacancy in the office of the vice president, whenever there's a vacancy, any vacancy for any reason, the president shall nominate a vice president who shall take office upon confirmation by majority vote of both houses of Congress.
Simple majority,
but it takes both houses.
Okay, which is interesting. So you can avoid some of the worst of the people with that. A little historical context for you, Ron. There have been, I believe, 15 or 16 times in U.S. history where the vice presidency has been vacant for a period of 6 months or longer. And I think there's been 7 times, and it's been for a period of more than a year.
something
I
like
think
that. Yeah.
the longest was like 3.5 years, sometime in the 1870s, without a VP.
Was that when Johnson took over for Lincoln?
That might have been the longest. Let me pull. I got the list handy. I'll pull it up and give you some fun facts.
And you know what? I'm embarrassed to say, who was the vice president under LBJ? I don't know.
Bear with me.
I'm thinking about it.
He had a long vacancy. I know that. And then when he ran again,
Well, he ran in 64, and I don't remember who his running mate was in 64.
he ran with Hubert Humphrey.
So, and Hubert Humphrey was the guy who ran again for president in 68 and just got destroyed.
Yeah, Nixon. Who's the guy who? Yeah, when Bobby Kennedy got shot, the Democrats got decimated pretty good. You remember who Nixon's first vice president was?
Yeah,
Spirits.
Rockefeller.
Nah. He was.
Rockefeller.
It was Spiro Agnew.
No, it was,
Spiro
that's
Agnew.
right. It was well,
and they kicked Spiro Agnew to the curb and placed Gerald Ford in there.
yeah, but no,
and then
Rockefeller was his first one, and then Spiro Agnew was the second one. Spiro Agnew was on the ticket with him in 72, but Nelson Rockefeller was his vice president, I believe, in 68.
I'm reading this from a list, so
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's going to be correct, and it also matches my memory. Rockefeller became VP on December 1974. He became Ford's vice president.
Okay, then that's where I'm getting it wrong.
Yeah, so Rockefeller was the primary rival of Nixon in 68, and the Rockefeller Republicans were a little bit out of shape, and Nixon beat him out. They ended up working together because they just come from different factions of that particular cabal. But yeah, so he almost had the richest family in the world as president of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and as for that time period without a vice president, when Spiro Agnew resigned in October of 1973, it wasn't until December of 1973 that Gerald Ford had been confirmed. So it was a couple months in that case.
So Truman went without a vice president from 45 through 49.
Wow.
So it was almost 4 years, which is interesting considering it's wartime. It's one time you don't want to have a break in the chain of command. Let's see. When Coolidge took over for Harding, it was vacant for 2 years. Sherman passed away during Taft's term, so he had 2 years without.
I was interested to find out today. You know, I always liked Taft. I was interested to find out today that Taft was a bonesman.
He was a what?
Ron, I did that on my presentation like 9 months ago. I went through the bonesman.
That.
Oh yeah, he's also the he's one of the only man to be both the president of the United States and a chief justice.
And Supreme Court justice. Yeah.
I just didn't remember that he. I didn't remember that he was Skull and Bones.
His grandfather was one of the two co-founders of Skull and Bones.
Mm.
So Taft, yeah, he's all the way through that. So Andrew Johnson went his entire presidency without a VP. So 1865 to 1869 was the longest.
And they tried to impeach him at one point. Well, they did impeach him, but they didn't remove him from office.
By one vote.
By one vote.
Millard Fillmore had no VP his entire presidency. He was a VP of Zachary Taylor, who passed away in office.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll give you a couple other ones. John Tyler had no VP. He took over for Harrison. And that was almost as long.
Benjamin Harrison, if I remember properly, he was the he was also the first one in which there was a question regarding his eligibility.
Talking about William Henry Harrison?
Mm-hmm. I believe. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. You're right. Because he was born like up in Vermont, right next to Canada, and there's questions of where he was born and all that.
Yeah, there's some fun ones back there. A few other short-term vacancies in the early 1800s, and that's really. But you've had a lot of long-time periods of time without a VP.
Well, so. I don't believe that we would have if there was a if at this point in time we had a resignation of Kamala Harris, I do not believe that we would have a very lengthy period of time between now and having a new one. I think that it would be way more staged than anything. I think that they would already have somebody in mind that they wanted to have.
Okay, so let me address that real quick, Ron. Having been studying the gamesmanship in DC for quite some time, I kind of agree with Sundance at Conservative Treehouses, how he kind of paints the Democratic Party, and there's probably like 5 main factions, and they all they do power sharing. And for example, when Biden was coronated as the Democrat, the one they're going to run in 2020, that was basically done behind the scenes, and they made a deal with the Black Congressional Congress. It's a power sharing agreement. And when you start moving dominoes at the top, so like, for example, the Black Congressional Congress, they will not allow Kamala to be pushed aside for anybody else. They've made that crystal clear. So when they're doing this gamesmanship of, basically puppet mastering, you got to put all that into consideration. Think of the faction you're going to.
I understand that, but if somebody made a deal with Kamala and she resigns, there's nothing they can do about it.
Well, she doesn't do anything without she's not making her own decisions. That caucus will act together, but
Well, if there's one thing that I have learned from Washington D.C. is nothing. There's nothing that is not for sale.
There's that, and there's one other thing. Nothing is ever what it seems.
This is true.
So
most
to get me to believe that Kamala Harris can't be bought for a price to resign as vice president is you'll never get me to believe that.
Well, you're going to have to get somebody else who checks certain boxes to take her place. It's the only way you're going to mollify the shall we say the critical race theory section of the Dems. They are they're going to be very reluctant to give up any power. I think the betting odds, what I looked at the other day, is the current betting favorite is to be the 2024 nominee is still Biden, but Gavin Newsom's creeping up, and Kamala Harris is in 3rd or 4th.
I thought Gavin Newsom, though, had said the other day that he was not going to run in 2024.
Well, and they said as Biden is running, he gave the caveat, and I think they all have to say that. That's you're not gonna primary, your party leader, quote unquote, even though we all know he's a potato. So if because Gavin said it, probably means it's not true. He does not have the best track record. We got a bit of a victory last week in San Diego, as the courts ruled that our school district could not, San Diego Unified School District could not impose vaccine mandates.
And there's a court back east that said that New York could. So that creates now a controversy in the federal court system. So I believe that on appeals, that one of those cases is going to eventually wind up with the Supreme Court.
Well, I hope so, because, it's whether a school district can or not was decided here. The problem in California is that the state legislature is poised to do a statewide mandate. Mm-hmm. And that one's going to have to be fought as well on very similar grounds. But I had a chance to listen to Del Bigtree, who's one of the lawyers who brought that case. He did a fantastic job. Del's good people. If you get a chance to hear him speak locally, you should. All right. Anyone in the audience have any topics you want us to go over?
Well, someone was asking me about my thoughts on the Brunson case. And I haven't, I'll be honest with you, Conservative Cowboy, I haven't read the case yet. I'm not familiar enough to give an opinion. Warhamster brought it to my attention the other day. I just haven't had a chance to really sit down with it yet.
Ron and I were discussing this before the show started, before Doug got here.
Okay.
And it's an interesting one. My comment is the fact that it got this far is very impressive. I did read the case and all its attachments. It was a very well reasoned argument. You would have given it definitely a B+ or better.
Okay.
Grade.
So what's the basic for anybody who's not familiar?
Ron, you want to do that, or you want me to?
Okay, so they're suing Congress, all of Congress, anybody who voted to certify the election. They are essentially voting to have the sergeant, or they're lobbying the Supreme Court to vote yes or no to remove them from office and charge them with felonies because they failed in their duty to investigate the whether or not there was election fraud. This is not saying that the election was fraudulent. This is saying that there was concerns raised, and Congress has a mandatory obligation to give 10 days to look into that, before they certify the election. And not only did they refuse, but they actively went against it. So this case essentially is as it was described by Jay Snip. I'm gonna steal his words, but this is a get out of free jail card for the Supreme Court. If you have white hats that are running the show behind the scenes, this actually absolves them of any responsibility, because they can remain unpartisan and unbiased. You have somebody behind you, Doug. They can.
That was Mrs. Constitution.
I figured as much. That they can vote either yay or nay that Congress shirked their responsibility in allowing the 10 days for debate about why there was issues raised about the validity of the election.
That was an excellent summary, Ron, and I'm going to add to it with a few paragraphs from the suit. It starts with, on January 6, 2021, the 117th Congress held a proceeding and debate in Washington, D.C. The proceeding was for the purpose of counting votes under the 2020 presidential election for the President and Vice President of the United States under Amendment 12. During this proceeding, over 100 members of Congress claimed factual evidence that the said election was rigged. The refusal of the respondents to investigate this congressional claim is an act of treason. Further, due to the fact that this case represents a national security breach on an unprecedented level, like never before seen, seriously damaging and violating Brunson, and coincidentally affects every citizen of the U.S. in courts of law, and voting is the greatest power of an individual can exercise in a republic. It is Brunson's personal voice and the way he can protect his personal constitutional protected rights. Blah, blah, blah. And they're asking for remedy. It is necessary to immediately secure our national security without any further delay.
Now, the timing of this is interesting. If I may insert this real quick. The timing is interesting because one of the biggest stories this morning that has blown up is, and I'll read the story, just 3 sentences. A top official on Mojave County Board of Supervisors said publicly that he was told he'd be arrested if he didn't certify the midterm election in Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday, at a Mojave County Board of Supervisors meeting, Supervisor Ron Gould said, "I vote aye under duress."
Mm-hmm.
Gould continued saying, "I found out today that I have no choice but to vote aye, or I will be arrested and charged with a felony."
By whom? By whom? Who has the?
He didn't say that.
He did not say, but
the $1 million question.
But the time, and I saw the video this morning of that. One of my students showed it to me, and I think that the timing of that and this is kind of interesting. I think they will directly, they're directly relatable.
Well, at the same time, and I understand where you're coming from with that. We expected a decision from the Brunson case last Wednesday, the 23rd. It did not come. The only thing came was a filing from the government's choosing not to file, but reserving the right to do so if the court dictates they do so. There is somewhat credible reporting that the Supreme Court is going to, the next action on this will happen this Friday, but that is not confirmed on the Brunson case.
If this happens, as I understand it, if this happens, and they succeed in this, and the court rules in favor of that, then what would happen is they would go in and they would remove these people. They would no longer be eligible to be to be elected officials in the United States government. Moreover, everything that happened from at the federal election level in 2022 is null and void because it goes back to 2020. And then what they would do is they would reinstitute Trump as commander-in-chief to oversee, because he was the one that was the president at the time, and then they would redo the election. Now, that is how I understood it, and you tell me if I'm on or off there.
I think that's one of the possible remedies that people are hoping for. I don't think that is realistic. Personally, my prediction is they won't hear the case. Period. They will never get to arguments. They'll remand it back to the lower courts, and something will happen there or not. But if the Supreme Court were to hear it and grant Brunson, victory, the remedy has got to be something constitutional. Does the Supreme Court have the power to remove a sitting president? That's it, because it's actually.
But it's not about removing a sitting president. It's about nullifying or saying that the 2020 election is null and void, and the results are no longer there. So the guy who's operating,
but that doesn't necessarily remove the president. They still have to go through the procedure.
Yeah, it's uncharted territory. And the Constitution it doesn't give a specific prescription for what to do. But Ron, you're suggesting it's like taking away USC's national championship because of player got caught selling homes. That's a little bit different than removing a sitting president of the United States.
Yeah, I would say they would still go through a process of either impeachment, or that would allow the states to start decertifying electoral votes, and then if it goes below the minimum necessary, then it would push a re-election through the House of Representatives.
Given that the establishment wing of the GOP is openly declared that they're not supporting Trump in 2024, could we count on all of the Republican legislatures to support him?
No,
I don't think so either.
But remember, the vote is not about that. The vote is not by legislatures. It's by
it's not about that. It's not about that. If they're going to vote, but it's not just about the president. It's about all of the people who were. You would have to completely do brand new elections across the board.
Right, but they would focus on that one first. And the thing is, to get back to Brady's comment, remember, even though a number of Republicans would not support Trump if it, let's say, went back to the House of Representatives to vote for the president, because the electoral college number, the electoral number, votes number had gotten too low. Remember that the votes, while the delegates are all voting, their vote as individuals only count at the state, and then the state is one vote towards the president. So if you've got, let's say, such and such state that has 8 representatives, 2 Democrats and 6 Republicans, and 2 of the Republicans can't stand Trump, well, then it's going to be a no vote, because the Democrats going to vote against Trump. The 2 Republicans might vote against.
Well, if you're voting, but if you're voting in 2020, if you go back to vote in the 2020 election, then what's going to happen is you're going to vote for the only 2 people on the ballot are going to be Biden and Trump.
No, I understand that. But what I'm saying is it would have to go, if the number of electoral votes drops below, 281, then it goes back, it goes to the House.
That's
and
my
they're
point.
Voting on those 2 people, but it's per state is the vote. So you exactly. So you're going to have, certain people towards Biden, certain people towards Trump, certain people who's going to refuse to vote or whatever. But in the end, it's going to come down to who got the most votes for that state. Then that state will then vote for that person. So if you got, let's say, 3 representatives from Vermont, and one likes Biden, one likes Trump, and the other one's in between, then he's going to be that deciding vote, because only one vote is going to go to one or the other, or nobody if it's a tie.
Yeah, I hope it's out. I hope it would be out in the open. Let me make a small correction. Now, you said that there'd be other elections. Now, this lawsuit is only addressing the January 6th certification of the president and vice presidency. Those would be the only offices that had a do-over.
I know what he's saying, though. He's saying if this one's fraudulent, illegitimate, whatever word you want to throw out there, if that were the case, then it would create other electoral anomalies and irregularities and questions.
But that's not what the case. That's not what the case is arguing. They're not arguing that there was election fraud.
Mhm.
They're arguing that their due process was violated because they did not go through the challenges that were
Right.
There were challenges legally made, so therefore his rights were abridged. He is
Right.
he is not alleging fraud.
Yeah, and that
That
goes,
was one
and that would actually then go
Almost
back
done
to
here.
that Texas case. They
I'm
never
gonna
got their
shut
day
this to keep it warm.
because they never got their day in court. Is another one, or is the argument.
Well, speaking of, we're on court cases, we may as well talk about Harper v. Moore because that's coming up, and that's a very important case. Just to give everyone a quick summary, Moore versus Harper is a pending court case. It's related to the independent state legislature theory, rising from the redistricting of North Carolina's districts following the census. North Carolina's Republican legislature drew a new congressional map that was alleged to be very abusive and very Republican in favor. It was challenged in the courts or by the state Supreme Court, and that's how it got here. That's what they're defending. The reason that independent state legislature doctrine is in case is, as the Constitution states, the legislature has final say on time and place manner of elections, except for in federal races where Congress can make rules. This is Article 1, Section 4. It's in black ink.
Have fun.
Ron?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry.
I don't know if you know you weren't muted, but we heard all.
I didn't. Yeah, I apologize. I meant to mute. I have a. I'm trying to juggle many things today, and one of my good friends just came over.
Yeah,
We got here a little bit early. I
Oh,
apologize.
see, I thought it was a Steve Martin thing, and you were juggling cats.
No.
All right, back to the case.
Although that would be easy to do at my house.
At stake
Now, real quick, Brady. So the question is, does the state have sole decision making on this, or can the federal government dictate?
Or in this case, a state court.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The reason,
and it does say legislature in Article 1, Section 4. It does not say anything about the courts.
Yeah, no, it does not. And so we know definitively that the final say on making the law is a state legislature power. Now, the reason it gets very interesting is because this was a huge. This same debate came up in Pennsylvania in 2020, where Mark Elias and friends went and sued to change election laws at the last minute before the election. And the state legislature said, we didn't approve that. And the state Supreme Court said, who cares? We did it anyways. And the 2020 Pennsylvania election was run not by rules set by the state legislature. This is a problem. So the question then comes up, does this give Pennsylvania the ability to retract their 2020 electors? They sent two sets of electors originally.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the leftist side of social media, the legal side, are saying, well, you're just going to let a state legislature cancel any election? That's not what we're trying to do here. We're basically we're trying to set a rule of law. Who sets state law? And now this also has applications with the challenges in Arizona that are coming. Did Maricopa County disenfranchise their voters? The answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lower bar to prove than to prove fraud, because we can pretty much document how many. Yes, voters were disenfranchised. The question is how many. Since it can't be quantified, the only legal remedy historically has been a redo. That's the way that case should be argued.
Mm-hmm.
But is the redo only in Maricopa County, or is the redo in entire Arizona?
It would only be Maricopa where the disenfranchise took place.
Well, the redo would be who is discussed in the case, Ron. So if they're only discussing Maricopa, then Maricopa would only get it. However, that would encourage other areas who believe they should have a redo to also then file suit in a different case, expecting to get the same answer, since there's now a precedent established by the court.
Well, I don't see Pinal County or Yavapai County or any of those that are having issues. Mojave County, where's Mojave County?
Yeah, that's the one I was mentioning earlier about the supervisor saying that he.
Mojave. Okay, so Mojave County is basically,
They were the last one to give in, by the way.
and that's everything, like Kingman, Bullhead City, Lake Havasu, everything Hoover Dam, all the way up to Mesquite, to the Nevada line, and to the all the way up to the Utah line.
They have a case because they had machine problems as well. I would like them to basically take these as a separate case and sue the state legislature to get rid of the machines altogether, since their reliability has been questionable for 2 straight elections. And the fact that it takes 2 weeks to count one county is bloody ridiculous.
Yeah, I remember, growing up, we always knew. Even on 2016, we knew they called Trump. What was it, like 11 o'clock at night? I mean, everybody knew. There was no this whole thing of waiting until we got to wait. The elections aren't done. This has all been done since 2018 and on.
Now, the fact that the Republican, air quotes, Maricopa County recorder Stephen Richer, he had a super PAC raising money specifically to defeat Kari Lake.
Yeah.
Now, the conflict of interest is proven, and then you have the Secretary of State running against her. That's another conflict of interest. You have a pretty strong lawsuit just to start on because of the conflicts of interest. Then I believe they've got several thousand affidavits of people that got disenfranchised. But at the end of the day, you can't quantify how many there were. You can't say if it was 50,000 or 5,000. Was it enough to swing the election? That's not the question. The question is, was the election held under Arizona state law legally? Can it be certified? And the answer is it cannot. And that's what all these certification battles should come down to. You are swearing an oath that the election they just held followed the state law, and you're confident that the result is correct. That's what the certification is saying, which means there's an awful lot of people that broke their oath because there's a lot of elections lately that you cannot be that certain of. Whether it's fraudulent or incompetence, it does not matter. If the election wasn't run properly, the only historical remedy is a redo.
Well, I take exception to the guy, I don't remember his name, the guy who said that he voted yes under duress. Now, that he may have been thinking that he was going to be doing something noble by saying that. But, he should have risked voting no and getting arrested, in my opinion.
Well, I'm going to agree with you, but I like the fact that he actually announced it was under duress. But it comes back to my question: who threatened him?
Right.
Because if it was the Secretary of State itself, now we've got coercion on the election. Now she's actually put, and I think it might have been Katie Hobbs' office that told him that he had to do it, because I saw a press release from her. If that's the case, that is coercion. That adds to the Kari Lake case. Not only does she have a conflict of interest, but she put her thumb on the scale by forcing that compliance.
And quite possibly, maybe that was a blessing in disguise, because by saying he did it under duress, now it actually raises more attention. It raises more attention to the to what's going on than if he would have done it and then been arrested. Because if he would have done it and been arrested, nobody would have been the wiser. But if he says he does it under duress, and it states why, now everybody's saying, well, what the hell, WTF over. So I don't know, maybe that's a blessing in disguise.
Yeah, it may end up working in a favor. I just, like I said, when I said by whom, I think it's such an important question. Who made that threat? When we find out that answer, it has an impact on things.
Yeah, and I would like, I think everybody wants to know who that is.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me see if I can find. What was that? Katie Hobbs. Anybody have that Katie Hobbs tweet that she put out? Because she definitely said something on the topic, and shortly thereafter he succumbed. But if her office contacted him directly, that's a smoking gun right there. And I think we will find that out. Now, of bigger concern is Harmeet Dillon, who's running the legal case down there for the GOP, and hopefully not running point for Kari Lake, because Harmeet is running around with some very deep GOP rhino donors.
Yeah.
So Harmeet's not the person I want running that. I need to get more information. I'm actually speaking with my guy who's kind of a Republican operative in Maricopa area. I'm going to be talking tomorrow to get some boots on the ground inside information. So I'll share that with you guys if I get it.
And Harmeet is also a lawyer who we talked to about our case, and the words almost exactly were, "We won't touch that with a 10-foot pole."
Interesting. Yeah, she's I think she's one of the better GOP E-types, but she still has some apparent conflicts.
Yeah.
Good lawyer, though. All right. Anything else on the topic?
Not really, and I'm probably going to duck out because, like I said, I have a guest that was unexpected, and he got here a little bit early, and so I'm going to go ahead and bow out. But I'll let you guys finish up the last 10 minutes, and we will do the. We'll reconvene next Tuesday. So
yeah, Ron, I'll text you when we're done so you can kill the live stream.
Okay, I'll be close by. I'll monitor. So
right.
Good to see you, gentlemen, and look forward to seeing you again next week. But I'm sure we'll be talking soon.
All right, man.
Very good.
All righty.
Just the two of us.
Just the two of us.
I knew you were going to go there. Some people, too predictable. I got into a Twitter legal spat yesterday talking about judicial review, and I had so much fun.
Judicial review is a fun topic to talk about, especially when you know how to corner people with it.
Well, it's hard to do with 140 tweets or 140 characters, but I will tell you, I was told I know absolutely nothing about the Constitution whatsoever about a dozen times yesterday. And of course, I don't respond to people who argue with insults, but there was some pretty good discourse. One guy showed up and said, "Hi, I'm a lawyer," and I got this grin on my face. And he made an argument. I go, that is not an argument for where judicial review came from.
Well, and the argument that it is in the Constitution, it's in Article 3, and my response is always the same: show me where.
Well, I had already done that one. I'd say, okay, where in Article 3 are you going to find judicial review? Well, they knew about it. They talked about it on the floor. I go, yeah, and they specifically left it out for a reason.
Right.
So the question that then being asked is, where did the Supreme Court get the power of judicial review?
There's only one Constitution.
How is the Constitution? How can it be changed? Isn't there a mechanism that does that? Oh yeah, that's called an amendment. Did that happen? No. Therefore, judicial review is illegal. One could almost call it insurrection. And oh my God, that set off howls on Twitter. I had fun with it.
Joy is asking about the censorship I have experienced a couple times. The two videos that they decided to shut down are still shut down. Never got them back. There's been additional censorship on Google, which I did a video not too long ago, and I actually got online and I showed how it worked. I have a radio show on KPRZ, K-Praise, on Saturday nights. And that particular program also goes out on all of the podcast platforms. And I'm constantly checking those podcast platforms because I want to, make sure that, my show is properly being put out there. And so I went to Google and I typed Odyssey, Mr. Constitution Hour by Douglas V. Gibbs. And it gave me a list of links. I went to the top link. I hit it. And according to that page, the last show was provided back in July. And there's been no show since. Interesting. So I sent the screenshot of that to the station. The station said, no, all your shows are on there. That's not the link, though, that you go to. And so I looked at their link, and then I looked at, Google, and it was, like the 8th link down or something like that. So in other words, what they've done is they found a page that makes it look like I haven't done any shows since July as the top links. You have to decide to keep digging deeper to find the newer shows. Then in the video, I talk about why would they decide that my last show on Odyssey was in July. Well, that was about the time I finished with basic constitutional stuff. I started to get into more controversial topics since then. And it just so happened to coincide with that date. So there's a number of different censorship things going on. I don't expect to get those 2 videos back on YouTube, and the way I've been lately on this show and a few others, I wouldn't be surprised if I lose a few more in other places. But that said, be aware that whatever I put on YouTube, I also put on BitChute and Rumble. I'm starting to on Rumble. BitChute.com/Douglas V. Gibbs, Rumble.com/Douglas V. Gibbs. I also have a Brighteon page where I'm starting to put stuff there too. And so if I keep putting stuff on YouTube because that's where my largest audience is. I have like 1,800 on one and around 1,000 or so on another one of my YouTube channels. Rumble, I think I'm up to like 75. So I will continue to put stuff on YouTube, but be aware that they have shut stuff down, and I'm sure they will again. Down the road, I'm going to have my own video place that's outside all of these places. I mean, I'll still put them on these places, but I'll also have my own server protected video place also. That's down the road.
Yes, we will.
So there you go. As a matter of fact, you and I still need to call that person.
Yes, we do. In fact, this would probably be a good week to do it.
Yeah.
Hey, before we get ready to sign off, I want to get back to the Brunson case and Derek's question. So the best case scenario I think you can expect is if the Supreme Court thinks that either they just slap the thing down and it's gone forever,
Mhm.
or they say this is something that needs to be litigated. Supreme Court is not going to hear the arguments in the court. They are going to send it back down to a lower court, whether it be in appeals or what have you, because they always like to see the facts. All the discovery process needs to be hashed out at a lower court level before the Supreme Court will look at things. There are almost no exceptions to that in the 200+ year history.
Right.
So you are not going to see the Supreme Court, hearing this argument and all of a sudden standing up a week from now saying, overturn the election. Now there will be a process, and it'll be a very deliberate one if they decide to take it, which I think.
And even if there's a decision made saying that in favor of Brunson, there's going to be caveats. They're not going to suddenly overturn something. I see it as saying that it would launch investigations or would launch inquiries, not necessarily, okay, that's it, they're done. I don't see that happening.
No, so this whether they're going to look at it, I have not seen it on the docket, but Friday's supposed to be the day.
Mm-hmm.
To expect anything decisive quickly is probably, I would not get my expectations up for that.
Yeah, once again, I think they're going to decide not to hear it and send it and kick it back down. I think you're correct on that one.
Yep.
One other thing I got mentioned in the chat, Mike Lindell announcing he's running for RNC chairman. That would be interesting. Could you imagine the upheaval among the establishment if he became RNC chairman? Not that the chairman is as powerful as people think, but in the public eye they are, and it would.
What's the direct?
Some heads would be rolling away from the party.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of the big money donors would run and hide, which
Mm-hmm.
they're already doing. But they've been running away from America First candidates all year.
Yeah.
Anybody want? If you think about this, the America First candidates had to go up against the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, and we still got your red wave, and gained in the House. And so, the country's still running away from this radical left. The only problem is, the uniparty is still in place. And what do I always say? Right versus left is just a distraction to keep us from looking up.
Well, and regardless of who they are, when I say they, we mean the enemies of the Constitution. They know they're up against the ropes. They are trying to create a perception that they're not, but they know they're up against the ropes. And all we got to do is go to the rules of the jungle, fight or flight. They are going to get more dangerous the more we're able to corner them. So be aware, it's not going to be an easy ride.
The truth shall set us free.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. All right, it's top of the hour.
You want to go ahead and wrap us up?
Sure. Everybody, thank you for paying attention to the world stage and our United States. Thank you for being a patriot, because it's all hands on deck. All hands on deck, all hands man your battle stations. Because in the end, united we stand, combined we kick butt. God bless America, my friends. God bless you. Thank you for watching this. Don't forget that you can visit me at politicalpistachio.com, douglasvgibbs.com, and of course, all over the web in all kinds of places like YouTube, BitChute, and so on and so forth, and on the radio. And thank you for spending the time with us. Brady, got anything else to say?
Nope. Just see you guys out there on the road, on the streets, and there's rallies and protests and canvassing. Get involved locally, and let's make a difference. See you all next week.
Hands on deck. All right. See you then.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
And let's go ahead and duck out of StreamYard to kill the show.